Hey everyone, in Couple Synergy Land, we're going to be talking about anger today.
And its benefits.
Its benefits and also its role in relationships. So stay tuned. That's something that we are going to be talking about, and we're also going to be talking about our upcoming retreat. That's for individuals and couples as well. That's going to be coming up in September in Colorado. So just hang on. We'll be right to it.
Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. And this is their podcast, Couples Synergy.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Couple Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean. Hi, I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Jean. And this is our podcast about love, marriage, and relationships.
Please check us out online at couplesynergy.com or on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Couple Synergy. And please subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, or send us any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear more about. And now on to Couple Synergy, an in-depth look at love, marriage, and relationships, where we bring you our experience helping thousands of couples transform their relationships for over 25 years.
You know, everyone says you should work on your relationship, but nobody teaches us how. So we've created this podcast to teach people what they can do to create the relationship they've always dreamed of
with the partner they fell in love with. On today's episode, as we mentioned earlier, we are going to be talking about anger. We're going to be talking about the role of anger in relationships, its benefits. Why do we have anger? Why is it important? Why is it something that we have, right? You know, I just want to, before we jump into this topic, I wanted to comment on something someone had told us. They gave us some feedback personally about, our podcast and just how, just kind of almost how scripted, how fluid it is that
not
when
scripted.
not scripted, but how fluid it is that we speak. We don't really plan a script or anything when we're doing these podcasts, and we just kind of talk off the cuff about and from our own experience and our own education and knowledge.
So thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. It was really awesome to hear that. So let's jump into the topic of anger. All right. We've talked about conflict before in the past, and this is kind of dovetails with it, because anger is a very common emotion that's going to come up in your relationship. It's just guaranteed.
So it's sort of like the check engine light in your car. It's an indicator. It's a secondary emotion, which means something else is going on underneath the hood. And most people would kind of like to just snip that light, the wires to that light, and not look at things. And actually, when anger happens for us, and this is so important in the times we live in, it's our truth inside of us saying something's out of balance. Now, it doesn't say what. It doesn't say my partner's out of balance. It doesn't say I'm out of balance, and it doesn't say we are out of balance, but it is one or all of those three things.
Well, most of the time it comes up as my partner is out of balance,
right,
or you're out of balance. Everyone else outside of the angry person is out of balance, because anger, it works as a protective measure, right? We don't want to feel this vulnerable primary emotion, and so anger comes in to protect us from that. And typically it is going to respond by either fighting or running, right, or freezing. That's right. Really the three responses when we are faced with a threat.
And so it doesn't really help us navigate the real problem. It just indicates that there is a real problem. And you've heard us talk about relationships developmentally, and when we're children, that anger is so immediate, and it's so finding someone to take the heat off of us, right? But when you get more maturity, you realize that this is touching something inside of you that is painful or coming up for healing or out of balance, or maybe a boundary that you've set that you've let people violate. Whatever it is, it's something very important, and it's a great opportunity for healing and for renegotiating things in your relationship. However, it also makes us powerless. If we use anger and we stay there and we just find ways to justify our anger, and we'll see it, right? It's like when you buy a car and you see it everywhere. Oh, your partner can't do nothing right. Look at their clothes are on the floor and they left the dish in the sink and they were late and didn't tell you. And the list goes on and on and on, that
Yeah.
we can justify our anger. We can't heal in anger.
Yeah.
Because in anger, our emotions are so revved up, our logical brain is shut down.
Yeah. The anger is going to keep ripping open that wound and keep it, and cause it to fester more and more. So, anger is not a place of healing. It is a defensive place. It is only going to cause more harm in a relationship, but it is natural. It's a natural response, for us to be angry at someone who we think or feel and perceive that they are a threat, right? They're trying to hurt us in some way.
So you can see, if this is human psychology, that this is the way our anger works. If somebody wants to overpower you, they want you to be angry.
Yeah.
They want to incite you. You're off balance, you're off kilter. And more often than not, after you storm away or storm off or something, you're just going to be silent. You're going to stop really being a threat. You're just going to be bogged down with all your emotions. It feels terrible.
Yeah.
And, I was just talking to a client today and she's like, oh, it's so hard to find empathy when you're angry. It's impossible to find empathy when you're angry.
For sure.
And so, but that's the maturity. The maturity takes that step back, learns emotional regulation, which is what we're teaching on the weekend retreat. How do you regulate your emotions, your anxiety, and your anger, so that you can find that balance in your brain between your prefrontal cortex of logic and reason and problem solving and taking responsibility, and balance that with that hindbrain that's in fear and feels defensive and attacked.
I think a lot of people misunderstand or misconstrue anger for speaking your mind. Right? And people would be like, well, I told them off and I was being honest and I told, I spoke my mind. And that's not true. Anger, as we mentioned, is a defense mechanism. So what's going to come out is all defenses. It's not going to, what's not going to come out is the truth.
Right.
What your gut is saying, what your vulnerability is saying.
That something's hurting you or scaring you.
And so, what you're talking about is what people want is for you to get angry, because that means that they got to you, your vulnerable side, right?
Yep.
They hurt you in a vulnerable place. And now you're showing it. And now they, if they're a manipulative kind of person, they know it. They got you.
So then all we talk about is we argue the details of things which are completely irrelevant when we really get down to that healing place. And the anger wants us to do that. They want us to go through every little thing and show, well, this is what you did wrong. And this is what you did wrong. And the other person, of course, comes back and says, well, this is what you did wrong. This is what you did wrong. And none of that solves any problem.
Yeah.
But it is an indication that something is out of balance. I like, you usually say it like the boxing thing, when two people are boxing and they get kind twisted up together.
Yeah, all like meshed up in the middle.
Yeah, and the referee has to separate them so they can get back at it in a way that is more productive.
Yeah. And anger can become quite an addiction.
Yes.
It can be a very dysfunctional cycle within a relationship where couples get really just kind of mangled up in their own anger and they stew in it. And once they get into that place, it's really hard to get out of it. Right. And John Gottman talked about that as contempt.
Clarify that addiction piece of anger.
Yeah.
Because when you're angry, you're in a defensive position and those endorphins get released that help us through difficult things. So, if you've ever lost someone very close to you, and you'll see that over the next few days, you're crying a lot. And every time you cry, you sort of get to this numb place that almost feels like a buzz. And anger does the same thing. It loads our brain with things that make us feel empowered or better, but it really
makes us feel
isn't.
stronger, makes
Yeah,
us feel,
a
you
false
know,
sense of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
empowered in some way. And it is a false sense of it. And so people can become addicted to that.
Especially if other people respond to them in a way that they like. So if they're the person who's angry, if their goal is to get you to back off or to get you to submit to their will, and you do that, well, it works.
It
Guess
works,
what? They're
yeah.
going to use that again and again and again. They won't even be emotionally connected to their anger. They'll just be using anger as a form of manipulation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, the first part of the title here is why you're so angry. And if you're the person in the relationship that is angry all the time, right? That's something to really look at, right? Because it's like garbage in, garbage out. What are you putting into you? What are you ingesting? What are you focusing on in your life that is contributing to this constant anger and brewing that within yourself? A lot of times, you know, people get to the point that they have to remain angry so that they can be vigilant, right? Because if I'm not vigilant, then I am going to be caught in a position of vulnerability. I'm going to be seen as weak, or I'm going to be taken advantage of by somebody. So I have to constantly be on edge. And so if you're on edge all the time, you are ready to pounce, right? That anger is ready to go.
And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it really, you're the one that's out of control. You're not empowered, you're out of control. And everyone's very confused as to what's going on. So it's a very ineffective way of being, but it has this illusion of power and this illusion of being in control of other people. But really, everyone's just confused. And ultimately, people will stop putting up with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that just means that you're going to be more angry because now everyone's rejecting you.
And, you know, when you're in that place of anger, you are self-absorbed and you cannot see your part of it
Mm-hmm.
because you believe that you were wronged and people are against you. And so you will make it so. You will make the world appear that way no matter what's really going on. And you'll lack the ability to regulate your emotion and calm yourself down. And when we're revved up, we have tunnel vision and tunnel hearing, and we don't know what's going on with our partner or whoever else, our kids or
Mm-hmm.
coworkers. And so we can't really use that as a platform of healing until we get to those primary emotions, which requires emotional regulation.
So you don't really have to go very far and look far in this world to find someone who's angry.
No,
Okay. That's
you could probably open your phone and see lots of anger.
Anger is rampant. Okay. And you know, I hate to say this to you, but you're not going to change their minds. You can't have a logical conversation with someone who is angry because they're just looking for a place to spew that anger, to get it out, right? And don't be the doormat for that person, you know. And really what we're talking about here is focusing on what you have power and control over changing, and that is that is the anger that is being produced in your relationship, either by you, by your partner, or by the two of you together in your conflict cycle.
If you think about, you know, a small child and they're having a meltdown, you don't sit and talk logically to them when they're having a meltdown. You try to soothe them, you try to distract them, you try to get them to regulate their emotions. And you may even have them have a timeout, you know, go calm yourself down and then we'll talk about this.
I wish we can tell some adults to go take a time out.
Well, that's the part of people you're talking to when they're angry.
Mm-hmm.
They're
the little child
the
inside.
little child inside.
Yeah.
It's a very primitive, automatic response that we have. And yet we look at an adult and we think we can talk adult when someone's angry, and not going to happen. And all that happens when you show up in anger, you evoke anger in that person, and then you blow up and everyone's confused and there's no communication. You know, so what can we do? What can we do different when our partner's angry or when we're angry to get to that place of healing quicker?
Yeah, you know, one thing that you could say is, you know, I don't want to feel this way. and I don't want to do things this way. I want to do things different.
And I don't want you to feel this
And
way.
I don't want you to feel this way, and that just cuts through all of that defensiveness and the walls that are up and everything. And it cuts right to exactly what's going on. And that is that both people are hurting. They're hurting in the relationship. And that's why you're angry. And that's why you're trying to defend yourself and protect yourself. And if we can get past those walls, then you can open the door for an actual conversation to happen.
I remember working with this guy that he had some good road rage. He's a very road ragey kind of guy. And I asked him to bring a notebook, paper, and pen with him in the car. And anytime he was feeling that way, to pull over and to, write down what was going on. And he quickly overcame his road rage because he didn't want to pull over and write anything down. And he realized that it was kind of this habitual thing. And his main thing was, I'm not being respected. I'm not being respected. And we get like that. And that's our justification.
Mm-hmm.
And what you really want to look at is what happened to you that if someone else inadvertently or on purpose does something that activates your feelings of disrespect, that it throws you so off kilter that you would go to do something very dangerous, like get in a car accident or chase someone or something like that. And it's that kind of thing that we do. We get into this place of that primal defensiveness, but it really is something that has happened a long time ago. And the other person is just sort of the poker of the bear.
Yeah, the activator.
But you're the bear.
Yes,
that can
you're
get
the
poked.
one that becomes the bear, right? Yeah, the activator, and people can. Yeah, I hate to use the word trigger, but people understand what that means. People can trigger us, and what they're doing is it's not them that's triggering us. It's this past wound or these old wounds that we actually carry with us that is being poked by this other person.
I just saw this visual, and it was this glass of water with a person in it. And there's 2 glasses of water with 2 people in it. And in one glass, the woman is flailing around and freaking out. And the other one, she's just floating on the surface. And, it was like, how are you going to respond to things? It's not the water that's hurting you. It's your reaction to the water. And you can choose to get all, when you're hysterical like that, you're only hurting you, and you are losing all your power, and you are letting yourself be controlled by things. But when you start to look at, I wonder what this is doing in my life and what's coming up for me, and getting that control over something that's inside that hurt you at some point, and learning to not let that have power over you anymore, that is the healing power of anger.
I think that's a really good point, because the more that you are pointing outward at other people, the less you understand the anger that's going on, and the less you have control. And if you're pointing the finger inward and asking yourself, why does this make me angry? What this person said or what this person did. What is it sparking inside me? That's when you start to gain more control, and eventually you'll be able to not let it bother you. It won't have as much of a grip or power over you anymore, because you understand it.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of the concepts of the 4 agreements, where he says, don't take anything personally, which is very difficult to do. And we always use the analogy, if someone calls you a green giraffe, you're going to not be activated by that. You're going to look at them like, okay, what's wrong with you? But if someone calls you something and you pay attention and you believe it, now you're activated. And that's the part right there, that you pay attention and you believe it. And when we do that, that's the piece right there that we have control over changing. If we can identify it and have some maturity around it and learn to have a healing process around it, then you'll just be a green giraffe, and you'll be like, okay, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. I want to make mention that some people, they approach anger from a perspective of just cutting it out, or cutting the source of the anger out. And we see this a lot in families and people in relationships, where one person angers them, and so they just cut that person out of their life. Well, that doesn't take care of the anger. All it does is remove that person from your life. The anger is within you. And so
And
it's
you will
just
find
gonna,
another
right.
person to anger you.
You're just going to find someone else that is going to spark that again. And so now, I mean, it's unfortunately a very common practice in our society today, is that I'm just going to cut people out that are
Mhm.
angering me. And then they just end up becoming very isolated in their life
Yeah,
and
because
not
we think it's
connected to
out
anybody.
there. Yeah.
Right.
And one thing else I want to mention is that anger takes many forms. So, you do have the person who's angry, who is has contempt and is sarcastic and maybe yelling and throwing things. But you also have silent anger that they're simmering and stewing, and they may even have a smile on their face, but they're being very passive aggressive in that, whether they're aware of it or not. They're afraid of their own anger, and they'll just do things like, oops, I forgot to do that for you. Or I'm so innocent. I can't believe people are frustrated with me. Isn't that the no more Mr. Nice Guy idea?
Yeah, it's very passive
Mhm.
aggressive. It's very like smoldering type of anger and manipulative as well.
So there is explosive anger, but there is implosive anger as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just the behaviors on the outside, it's really the feelings that are underneath it. And always, 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 it's a secondary emotion. So you really have to identify the primary emotion underneath that to get to a place where you can tend to it.
And that starts with turning inward and understanding your own anger and where it comes from and how it shows up in your relationships. Don't try to manage your partner's anger if you haven't figured out your own.
So we were going to spend a few minutes talking about this weekend, and the sister of anger is anxiety. So anxiety is this state of alertness that there's a problem that is, I have to be careful. And it turns into anger once you match that up with something. So anxiety is, a lot of us that have anxiety, it's because they grew up in an environment that wasn't certain. They didn't know really what to expect. And so they always kind of had that low grade, am I safe kind of thing. And now you're talking about 30, 40, 50, 60 years of living in a body that's just waiting for something bad to happen, even though the threat has long since disappeared. And the reason we do the weekend is to pull you out of your environment, which means you're not going to be activated. No, you're not going to be stimulated with someone's text or email or any of that kind of stuff. So you're in a place in nature, which is really important. We're doing this in Estes Park in Colorado on a mountaintop. And so when you're in nature, nature has a way of helping us find our balance. So we're detoxing the nervous system that's kind of fried from being on alert so much, and allowing yourself to learn techniques that you can learn to breathe and regulate your emotions and calm down and rewire your brain from that peaceful place, which is where you can access that inner intelligence that'll help you figure out, why am I so angry to begin with, or anxious? And oh, what can I do about it now? And you find so much power in that. So we really hope that you join us on this weekend. It is so needed in our culture. And we all just live with too much stimulation. And to take a break from that, the people have been on our weekends. Whew. And when it's time to go home, they're just like, yeeks, because they finally feel that. And what happens when you feel that complete detox of that anger and that anxiety, and you find that place of peace, and you go back to your natural environment, your normal environment, I should say.
Normal. Yeah.
You will seek out that peace, and you will create more opportunity for that in your everyday life. And it's ongoing. And so instead of jumping to fighting with your partner, you're probably going to go, you know what? I need to go for a walk. I need to go breathe. I need to go rock in my rocking chair, something to regulate before I can come back and really have a conversation. I need to figure out what's going on with me.
So if you want more information, email us at contact@couplesynergy.com, or you can go to our Facebook page. There's an event, on our event page, and you can find out more information about that and how to register as well. So we want to thank you so much for joining us today on Couple Synergy. Our passion is in helping couples and people have happy and healthy relationships. And this podcast gives us a fun way of bringing our knowledge and expertise to you, our listeners.
This was a fun way. This was a good topic.
This is a good topic. For all of you listening, please let us know how you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, please email us at contact@couplesynergy.com for more information about Couple Synergy and our programs such as Relationship 101, the home study course, the next Couples Relationship Enhancement Weekend, and our premier couples coaching program called Couple to Couple. Look us up online at couplesynergy.com.
And if you know someone who could benefit from this episode, please download it and share it. And thank you for listening.
Until next time, synergize your life and synergize your love.
You have been listening to Couple Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Couple Synergy was recorded, edited, and produced by Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Voiceover and music entitled Breathe and Let Go was recorded and composed by Gina Gonzalez.